The night had barely begun when everything changed. It was supposed to be a simple family visit, just a quiet evening of laughter, takeout containers scattered across the table, and stories told between bites of food. Malik Johnson had just flown back into town after nearly a year overseas. His family didn't know much about what he did, only that he served in the military and traveled a lot. What they didn't know was that Malik wasn't just a soldier. He was Delta Force, an elite unit trained for missions that didn't officially exist. Missions where failure wasn't an option. He'd fought in places the world pretended didn't need saving. He'd taken down warlords, diffused terror plots, and saved innocent lives under cover of darkness. But to his family, he was just Big Brother Malik, quiet, protective, and always watching from the background. That night, the Johnson home was full of warmth. His younger sister, Keisha, had always been the heartbeat of the family. At 22, she was full of life, energy, and ambition. A nursing student by day and a youth volunteer on weekends, she believed in healing, in building bridges, not walls. But outside their cozy home, danger was lurking. Just 3 blocks down, in a rundown part of the neighborhood, a group of men, drifters, troublemakers, the kind who thrived on hate, had been cruising around looking for someone to provoke. They had the swagger of people who thought the law didn't apply to them. They threw slurs like weapons, not knowing that tonight their target would be the worst mistake of their lives. Keisha had stepped out to grab some late-night snacks from the corner store. She'd done it 100 times before. It was a quick, walk-familiar street well lit. She never expected it to be any different. But as she stepped out of the store with a bag of chips and a bottle of water, she heard footsteps behind her. Fast, uneven, drunk. The words came first. Cruel, loud, ignorant. She didn't turn around. She walked faster. They followed. "Hey, you too good to talk to us?" She didn't answer. One of them grabbed her wrist. Another blocked her path. The corner store clerk, too scared to intervene, stayed inside. One of them laughed as he pulled a lighter from his jacket and flicked it in her face just inches away, as if daring her to flinch. But Keisha wasn't afraid of them. She stood her ground, looked them right in the eye, and said, "Back off." The flash, the sound, it was sudden. A crack that echoed like thunder on pavement. A scream. Then silence. She collapsed on the sidewalk, her snacks scattered near her feet. The thugs ran. Cowards always do. Back at the Johnson house, Malik's phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. A trembling voice. "Your sister's been shot. She's at County General." The world around Malik slowed. For a moment, he didn't hear the rest. His mother's voice blurred in the background. His heart pounded, but his hands were steady. Unnervingly so. That part of him never switched off. The part trained for war. The part that counted seconds. Between gunshots and exits in every room. The part that had buried brothers in arms. Malik drove like a man possessed. When he reached the hospital, Keisha was still in surgery. Doctors said the bullet had missed her heart by inches. She might survive, but she wasn't out of danger. Malik didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just sat, stared at the blood on his jeans, and waited. But he wasn't really waiting. In his mind, he was already planning because they didn't know. Those men who pulled the trigger thought they were scaring a girl. They thought they were making a statement. They thought they were sending a message. They had no idea that Keisha had a brother who once led classified missions deep behind enemy lines. A brother who could track them, find them, and dismantle their lives before the authorities even filed the paperwork. They had no clue that they had just awakened a side of Malik that he had buried deep, because he'd promised himself never to use it at home. But now home was where the war had come. He looked at the police officer taking statements. They didn't seem too concerned. Another shooting in the bad part of town, another report that would collect dust. Malik noticed how the officer barely took down descriptions of the suspects, how he brushed off the store clerk's statement, how he rolled his eyes when Keisha's mother raised her voice. Malik knew this system wasn't built to bring justice for people like them, so he decided he wouldn't rely on the system. He'd find them himself, and when he did, they wouldn't see it coming. Across town in a quiet city bus, a young black teen sat near the back, headphones in, eyes on the passing streetlights. He wasn't thinking about violence or war, just about getting home after a long day. But when a pregnant woman climbed on the bus and struggled to find a seat, something in him made him rise. He didn't think about it. He just stood, smiled, and motioned her over. She looked surprised, even hesitant, but accepted. She sat down slowly, thanked him softly. He nodded, still not saying much. Minutes passed. Before she got off the bus, she turned to him and slipped something in his hand. A small folded note. He didn't open it right away. Just watched her disappear into the night. But what was written on that note would change everything. 2 stories, 2 strangers, and one city about to be torn apart and stitched back together by choices no one saw coming, because sometimes kindness travels further than bullets, and sometimes justice doesn't knock on the door, it breaks it down, to be continued. Malik sat in his car outside the hospital long after visiting hours were over. The hallway lights inside flickered against the glass, and nurses walked back and forth, their silhouettes barely visible. His mother had gone home with his younger brother. They needed rest. But Malik stayed. He wasn't the same anymore. Something had shifted inside him the moment he saw his sister's body lying pale and still on the hospital bed, tubes in her arms, machines breathing for her. He kept replaying it in his mind. The call, the silence, the sight of blood on the ground, her blood. This wasn't the battlefield. There were no enemy flags or uniforms, just people hiding behind masks of normalcy, doing evil in plain clothes, in his own neighborhood. And they had chosen the wrong family. Malik knew he had to be smart. He couldn't just storm into the streets demanding answers. That's how you get locked up, or worse, disappear before you can finish what you started. So he did what he'd been trained to do, observe, gather, and wait for the right moment. He visited the corner store the next morning, walking in like any regular customer. The old man behind the counter looked up, his hands trembling slightly. He recognized Malik from the night before, and guilt flashed across his face. Malik didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just looked at him, calm and serious. "Tell me everything you saw," Malik said softly. The man hesitated but nodded. He remembered the car, a rust-colored pickup, one headlight broken. He remembered the voices. The men were young, white, mid-20s. One wore a bandana over his face. Another had a snake tattoo curling down his forearm. They reeked of alcohol and bad intentions. The old man had wanted to help Keisha, but fear had frozen him. Malik didn't blame him. Not everyone was built for confrontation. But now, that memory was worth gold. Later that evening, Malik sat alone in his room, lights off, laptop open. His old military gear was still in storage, but his skills were sharp as ever. He tapped into public cameras near the intersection. Most weren't working, figures, but a few had recorded enough to catch the truck passing through around the time of the shooting. He enhanced the footage, slowed it down, and zoomed in. Snake tattoo. That was him. Clear as day. He froze the frame, took a screenshot, printed it. Then he leaned back in his chair, eyes hard. Now he had a face. Meanwhile, across the city, the boy who had given up his bus seat finally opened the note. His name was Jamal. 16, soft-spoken, raised by his grandmother after his parents passed. He never caused trouble, never looked for praise. That moment on the bus, standing up for someone who looked tired and uncomfortable, it was just who he was. His grandmother always said, "Be the kind of man this world doesn't expect. Be kind when they expect anger. Be strong when they expect silence." He unfolded the note slowly, expecting maybe a thank you or some quick words of gratitude. But it wasn't just a note. It was an invitation. There was a name, a phone number, and a sentence that made him sit up straight. "I work for someone who notices things. You stood up when no one else did. If you're ever in trouble, or if you ever want to change your life, call me." Jamal stared at the paper. Who was this woman? Why did she write that? What did she mean by someone who notices things? He hadn't even told her his name. Was it some kind of joke? He kept the note in his pocket, unsure what to do. Back at the hospital, Keisha was stable but unconscious. The doctor said she had a long road ahead. Malik sat beside her, holding her hand, watching the heart monitor blink steadily. He remembered when she was little, how she'd follow him around the yard, asking him endless questions about the stars, the world, and everything beyond their neighborhood. She used to call him Captain Malik, imagining he was some kind of space explorer. Even then, she believed in people, believed the world could be better. Now she was lying still, because some hateful men didn't want to see a strong black woman walking alone and confident. Malik's jaw clenched. He'd promised to protect her, and now he was going to keep that promise, no matter what it took. He started making a list. Places known for gang activity, dive bars on the edge of town, shops with no names and tinted windows. He asked questions carefully, talking to the right people, people who owed him favors or respected the quiet way he carried himself. Everyone knew Malik wasn't someone you messed with, but no one really knew just how far his reach went. A name surfaced. Ty Briggs, local troublemaker. Had done time for assault, drove a rusty pickup, snake tattoo on his arm, hung out with 2 other guys from a group known for stirring racial tension. People said Ty liked to act tough around those who couldn't fight back. But Malik wasn't one of those people. He knew where to look now, but he also knew he had to be careful. One wrong move and it could all backfire. He wasn't here for revenge, he was here for justice. Real justice, the kind you can't wait on when the system's broken. Meanwhile, Jamal found himself looking at the note again. He kept thinking about that woman on the bus. There was something about her eyes, tired but wise, like she'd seen the world and still believed in it. He wondered what she meant by her words. Was she connected to something bigger? Or was this just one of those strange things that happen sometimes? He finally picked up the phone. It rang, once, then twice. A woman's voice answered, calm, precise. "I was wondering when you'd call." Jamal hesitated. I don't know why you gave me that note, but you're not in trouble," she said. "You did something kind. And someone noticed. That's rare these days. Would you be willing to meet?" Jamal didn't know why, but he said yes. Later that week, they met in a quiet park near downtown. The woman introduced herself as Marissa. She worked for a private foundation that helped youth with potential, ones who made choices others ignored. She offered Jamal a scholarship to attend a summer leadership program, a place where he could learn, grow, and find opportunities far beyond what his neighborhood could give. Jamal was stunned. No one had ever noticed him like this before. No one had ever handed him a door and simply said, "Walk through." But something about it also felt bigger, like there was more to it than just school. Marissa looked at him and said, "The world's watching, Jamal. What you do next matters." And somewhere across town, Malik pulled his hoodie over his head and walked toward a warehouse on the edge of the industrial district, a place where Ty Briggs was known to hang out. He wasn't carrying a weapon. He didn't need one. The fire in his heart was burning bright enough. He was ready to confront the people who shattered his family. But what he didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that Ty and his crew weren't just acting alone. There were whispers of a larger group, a hidden network feeding the hate, and Malik was about to walk straight into the storm. To be continued. The wind picked up as Malik stood outside the warehouse, hidden in the shadows of rusted shipping containers. The place was quiet, too quiet. He didn't move right away. He watched. He listened. Years of training told him something wasn't right. The men he was hunting, Ty Briggs and his crew, weren't the kind to sit around playing cards. They were impulsive, cocky, loud. But tonight, the silence around the warehouse pressed against Malik like a warning. He stepped forward slowly, eyes scanning every inch. Broken window, faded paint, a door slightly ajar. That was the entry. He pulled his hood lower, walked up to it with the calm of a man who'd done this many times before. Inside, the air was thick with dust and gasoline. A light flickered overhead. The room was empty, but there were signs. Beer bottles, cigarette butts, a half-eaten sandwich on the table. They had been here. Recently, maybe minutes ago. Malik knelt near the table, spotted a small patch on the back of a chair. A patch with a strange symbol. An eagle holding a flaming torch, surrounded by 3 stars. It wasn't gang-related. This was something else, something organized. He stood quickly. He wasn't alone. A footstep echoed from the back hallway, then another. Malik's body tensed, but he didn't run. He backed into the shadows, heart beating slow and steady. 2 men appeared, neither of them Thai, but both carried themselves like they were used to handling trouble. One of them wore a security vest. The other had a radio in his hand, whispering quietly. "Area's clear," the man said into the radio. No sign of anyone. But Malik was already gone, slipping out through the broken window, moving fast and silent. Back. In his car, Malik sat still for a long time. That patch. The men with radios. This wasn't a random act anymore. This wasn't just about 3 racist thugs messing with his sister. There was something bigger at play. Something more coordinated. His instinct screamed it. But who were these people? And what did they want with a quiet neighborhood like his? As he drove away, he noticed something in the rearview mirror. A black SUV following at a distance. It didn't flash its lights. Didn't try to catch up. Just stayed there steady. Watching. He turned once, then twice. The SUV stayed with him. Malik took a sudden left into an alley and cut his lights. The SUV rolled past a few seconds later, slow and deliberate, like whoever was inside wanted him to know they were watching, but not ready to make a move yet. He took out his phone, snapped a photo of the license plate, and sent it to an old contact from his Delta Force days. Someone who owed him a favor and could still tap into databases Malik no longer had access to. That night, he didn't sleep. Across the city, Jamal sat in his bedroom with the note in one hand and his grandmother's Bible in the other. He'd met Marissa again that afternoon. She told him about the foundation she worked for, a private group that supported young leaders from underrepresented communities. They offered scholarships, mentorship, and sometimes protection. That last word had caught his attention. Protection from what? Jamal had asked. Marissa had looked him straight in the eyes. From being forgotten, from being silenced, from being targeted. He didn't fully understand what she meant, but her tone said enough. Jamal had always kept his head down, stayed out of fights, avoided gangs, stayed in school, made it home before dark. But now he was realizing something. Sometimes trouble finds you anyway. And sometimes your silence doesn't keep you safe. It only keeps you invisible. At school, the next day a kid named Travis bumped into him in the hallway. Jamal didn't think anything of it, until he noticed the way Travis looked at him. Cold, like he was sizing him up, like he knew something. Later that day, someone had spray-painted a message on Jamal's locker. "Keep your seat, boy." Jamal stared at it, heart pounding. It was small, petty. But the meaning was clear. Someone didn't like that he'd given up his seat to a white woman. Someone thought he'd stepped out of place. He didn't tell the principal. He didn't tell his grandmother. He just wiped the locker clean and walked home with his head down, but his mind racing. This was bigger than a bus ride, bigger than a kind gesture. He didn't know it yet, but the same people who had marked Malik's sister for violence had noticed him too. Meanwhile, Malik received a message from his contact. The SUV's plate belonged to a private security firm based out of a shell company in another state. The kind of place used to cover up serious operations. Government adjacent. He knew the game. These weren't local thugs. They were being protected, or worse, funded. He started connecting dots. The warehouse, the patch, the careless police response. The security SUV. It all pointed to one thing. This wasn't personal. It was policy. Keisha had been targeted because she was visible. A black woman leading in her community, educating youth, speaking up, standing proud. She represented something these people wanted to silence. And now Malik knew he wasn't dealing with street criminals. He was up against a system designed to erase people like his sister before they could rise. but Malik wasn't the kind of man to be intimidated. He knew how to gather allies, how to move without being seen, and he wasn't alone. Jamal didn't know it yet, but he was part of this too. So was Marissa. So were others, people who had been watching from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to act. And somewhere, Ty Briggs was still out there, still walking free, still believing he had gotten away with it, but he didn't know Malik had his name, his face, his habits, and Malik was coming. Still, danger was closing in from all sides. Someone had leaked Malik's presence in town. One of his former missions had been flagged in a private intel forum. A red tag now hovered next to his name. Unstable, trained, dangerous. The people behind Keisha's shooting weren't just hoping to escape justice now. They were planning to strike again before Malik could expose them. And the boy on the bus? He was the next one they were watching. Be continued. The days that followed passed in fragments. Tight-lipped conversations, missed calls, glances over shoulders. Malik barely slept. Every lead he chased only opened another question. Every answer came with a warning. It was like peeling back a wall only to find another wall behind it. But he kept going. Late one evening he met Marissa. Not in a cafe or a quiet park, but in a dimly lit community center after hours. She stood waiting by the gym door, arms crossed, her eyes scanning the hall. "Empty lot. You're being followed," she said before he could speak. "I know," Malik replied calmly. "You too?" She nodded. "Ever since Jamal made contact, they're watching all of us now." "Who are they?" Malik pressed. Marissa hesitated. Then she took out a small folder, handing it over. Malik flipped it open. Photocopies, memos, surveillance images, lists of names. It wasn't just random hate groups. It was an organized network of private interests. Corporate money, political donors, shadow operatives. They worked through local figures like Ty Briggs, feeding fear, pushing division. Violence wasn't a side effect. It was a tool. "Your sister was speaking at a youth summit next week," Marissa said. "They couldn't risk her influence, that's why they sent the message." Malik's grip tightened on the folder. "They failed." "No," she said softly, "they're still trying." A soft knock echoed through the hallway. Jamal stepped into the light, eyes wary. Malik had only seen him in a photo, taken from the bus security feed. But now, standing here, Malik saw something in the boy. Not fear, not pride, but quiet strength. "I didn't ask to be part of this," Jamal said, voice steady. "But I'm not running." Malik gave a small nod. "Then we moved together." They set up a plan. A small rally was happening the next evening. Youth from across the city gathering to speak about change. Keisha had been set to lead it. Now, Marissa had quietly kept her name off the flyers just in case. But the organizers had agreed to let Malik say a few words. That was the opening. Not just to speak, but to watch who showed up, who lingered, who didn't belong. That night, Malik sat by Keisha's hospital bed. Her breathing had grown stronger, though she still hadn't woken up. He held her hand, whispering updates, letting her know things were moving. Her room was quiet, but a strange buzz ran under the silence, like the calm before a storm. Elsewhere, in a rundown bar on the edge of town, Ty Briggs sat with two men, hunched over a burner phone. He scrolled through photos of the rally flyers, zooming in on familiar names. When he paused on Jamal's picture, he smirked. "That's the kid from the bus," he said, flicking ash from his cigarette. "They're pulling him in." "What's the move?" one of the men asked. Ty leaned back. "We crash it, make a statement, loud and clear." Back at the rally grounds, preparations began. The city park stage was small, but the energy was strong. Teens painted signs. Volunteers arranged folding chairs. A few uniformed officers stood by the perimeter, but Marissa wasn't relying on them. She had her own team, quiet watchers, positioned like ordinary parents, like cousins, like community members. Malik moved through the area, eyes sharp, studying exits, angles, and shadows. Jamal arrived just before sunset. He looked nervous but ready. He didn't ask what Malik planned. He just nodded and followed instructions. His role was simple: stand on stage for a moment, say something small, personal, but meaningful. "I just gave up my seat," he had said during rehearsal. "That's it, that's all, but now I see that kindness makes waves." The speech was short, but Malik knew it would echo. That's what they wanted to silence. The crowd started forming as night fell. Neighborhood folks, school kids, local leaders. But among them, Malik noticed 3 men near the back standing stiffly. No signs, no smiles, just watching. One wore a hood, the other a flat cap pulled low. Malik adjusted his position, signaling quietly to Marissa. Then another signal. A 4th figure had entered from the parking lot. Ty Briggs. Malik's heart pounded, not with panic, but with fire. He didn't move. Not yet. Ty walked slowly along the perimeter, blending in, eyes cold and calculating. Jamal was minutes from walking on stage. Malik leaned over to one of Marissa's men, whispering quick instructions. Then he slipped around the crowd, keeping Ty in view. The tension wrapped around everything, like a fuse burning toward an explosion. The microphone buzzed on. A speaker introduced Jamal. He stepped onto the stage, his eyes scanning the crowd. Ty Briggs took 1 step forward. Malik moved fast. But just as he reached the edge of the crowd, he saw it. A second van parked off-site, engine idling, someone inside wearing a headset, eyes on a screen. This wasn't just Ty, this was part of something coordinated, something timed, and the clock had just hit 0. The rally was about to become a battlefield. Malik didn't know yet what Ty had planned, but every instinct in him screamed, this was it, the moment everything would change, to be continued.